As you heard earlier, Cosatu has backed ANC Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa to succeed President Jacob Zuma as party president. The federation says it will work hard to lobby and influence ANC structures to support Ramaphosa's candidacy at the party's elective conference in 2017. To look into this matter, we are now joined from our Pretoria Studios by political analyst from the University of South Africa, Professor Lesiba Teffo. Prof, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Your World. Finally, Cosatu has spoken out on who they want to back for their backing for the ANC presidency. What could be the influencing factor to choose Ramaphosa?
Before I even comment, let me just thank South Africa for having been so much endowed with prophets and even messiahs. Let's give Claudia an opportunity to lead us to the promised land. Yes, when it comes to Cosatu and Ramaphosa, very interesting indeed, because this turnaround is very telling to me. They seem not to be keen to change tag in relation to who was supposed to take charge. Yet the history of the organization to which they are aligned said Ramaphosa ought to be the one who should take over. But up till last week or so, Stumo Dlamini unequivocally wasn't in favor. So was his colleagues. If anything, in a muted fashion, they were gunning for Nkosazana Zuma. So it's fine. If it is Ramaphosa, it is consistent with their practice, consistent with their custom, consistent with their tradition. They often say whoever is the deputy president of the ANC, not necessarily of the country, is the one who should take over. So I think it might be time for him to do so. Whether he's the right person to lead South Africa, I'm not sure of that, because personally, I am of the view that the systemic rot in the organization runs so deep that even Ramaphosa cannot redeem the ANC from itself. If anything, the history of the liberation movement tells me, once a liberation movement reaches this stage, the best it can do is take a break for 5 or 10 years, go and regroup, refashion itself, remodel itself, and then come back.
Now, Prof, you just mentioned there that there must have been a debate between whether they would go, Cosatu would go with Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma or with Ramaphosa. Now, Cosatu has come out and said the decision came after a robust a conflict or debate during their CEC. Do you believe the Federation is united in the choice to back Ramaphosa as the next president of the ANC?
I don't think it has more to do with robustness. It has more to do with political opportunism and political expediency. Look, President Jacob Zuma, in the language of politics, is a lame duck president. He has nothing to offer those who back him today. But yesterday, he was a worthy horse to back because he could at least dish out patronage. And indeed, he did that perhaps even to the extreme, if not ridiculous extreme. But right now, based on the politics of the stomach, I think people are beginning to position themselves and are beginning to say who chose to back. And I'm one of those who may say, yes, logic might be dictating to some that given what President Jacob Zuma has done and what the name Zuma has become synonymous with, it might not be opportune to back Nkosazana Zuma. Her credentials notwithstanding. She has fairly good credentials. But equally so is Ramaphosa. But some might argue he's damaged good. Not only because of Marikana, but also because if you look at how much wealth he has amassed over the years, many people would say those who have amassed so much wealth because of political connections are not necessarily worthy of the assumption of the office of head of state. But you can hear others say, perhaps those are the ideal people to do so because they are rich. They are not going to set themselves up and their families. They will just get in there, running and serve the people. If it's the risk that South Africa wants to take, so be it. But I think it is not the ANC that can take us to the promised land. They must retreat. take a break, make an introspection, be born again after 5 or 10 years. That's what the history of the liberation struggle dictate to me.
Now, just speaking of Ramaphosa, do you think he has the support from the branches and provinces to go all the way?
I would argue in his favor to the extent that the history of the organization attests to that, right? I would say yes. And I suspect, as I said yesterday, that he's almost certainly going to get it. As we get closer to the election, 2017 elections, people are going to look more at their interests rather than what South Africa needs at this juncture, given the challenges it is faced with. Don't worry about the women's league. Not long they will be there. They themselves will be coming on board. Don't worry about the MK veterans. The Mapatswas, they will be thinking about, am I going out? Am I losing all the pegs that go with being this office? Or am I backing this horse? And invoke tradition, practice, and custom in the ANC. Expediently, you can quickly say, but why shouldn't it be Ramaphosa? Because that's how we have been doing it all along. And politicians, as you know, with a straight face, they will turn around and say, well, we made a mistake, if they are humble enough, and then we are embracing Ramaphosa. So I think the branches will support him. Even those who are pretending otherwise will come on board.
Now, Cosatu played...
As did, of course, Cosatu.
All right. Cosatu played a key role in advancing the presidency of Jacob Zuma at the 2007 ANC elective conference in Polokwane. Is the federation still holding some persuasive powers to sway for Cyril Ramaphosa?
Not as much as it did yesterday. Same can be said for the Youth League. But again, they are part of an alliance, and they are worthy foot soldiers that have some networks on the ground. They will bring a sizable chunk of the electorate to assist the ANC. Therefore, even those who may not necessarily want to embrace them, given the frictions and the ructions they've had together, they would still want to embrace them because they really are an organized lot on the ground. And in the rural areas, people still believe if you bring at least hampers and you speak the lingo of the community, you can still win the day. And I suspect, yes, Cosatu will play a role, will be influential, will bring reasonable chunk of votes. Whether enough to carry them again into the State House or into Parliament as a leading party, I'm not sure.
Now, Prof, the ANC says Cosatu's stance on Ramaphosa as the next ANC leader is unfortunate and will not bolster unity. What do you make of the statement? Yes,
look, the history of the man says he's a good negotiator, it's all that. But the past 10 years, right, has rendered him almost impotent in that he said them almost waiting, right, and ensuring that he doesn't offend or is not caught on the wrong side of the divide, and negotiating and maneuvering his way. And in the course thereof, I think he lost a lot of credibility. That's why some would argue it can no longer be him. It's not the Ramaphosa of yesteryear, unless we are talking about his previous glory and think it can turn things around. And that's why even within the Cosatu and within the structures of the ANC, there are those who believe that, yes, per tradition, but there's so much harm the presidency has done, so much harm that the leadership has done. Who are the 101 veterans who are talking? Who are the safe South Africa people in the forefront? These are the members of the ANC who are saying, maybe we need other people to take the country forward. The current crop, especially the top 6, if it is possible. But allow me to make this point. South Africa is talking about Ramaphosa and Nkosazana out of 50 plus million people, right? Why is it? Simply because the Electoral Act is flawed. You elect the party elect the person, never mind how flawed. Certainly, Jacob Zuma would not have been our president had we had a system that was open like Zimbabwe, despite its challenges. If indeed we change the Electoral Act as the ANC once sought to do so in 2004, then anybody, even a daughter or a son of a sharecropper, can raise his or her hand. But as things stand, you are almost forced to make a choice between two people, as if there are only two people, or as if there is only one party from which we can draw the leadership of the country. I'm calling for, as I did yesterday and today, for the change of the Electoral Act, so that anybody who has the ability, even those who are interested, can be approached and be invited to come on board and then contest.
Now, Prof, let's shift focus from the ANC party leadership and Cosatu's support for Ramaphosa. Move on to another announcement they made calling for Mineral Resources Minister Mosebenzi Zwane to be fired. This is a very strong stance.
Well, yes, to be fired by who? Because, in fact, under normal circumstances, in developed democracies like Botswana just next door, the man lied, some would argue, in parliament. The head of state even reprimanded him, right? Some in other mature democracies, and some of those are obtained on the continent, he would have at least owned up and resigned. He would have fallen on his sword. But if you are saying it is the ANC or the head of state who will fire him, I'm sorry. The immediate history that I'm familiar with, and I'm living under, doesn't lend itself to that possibility.
Prof, we have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us. That was political analyst from the University of South Africa, Professor Lesiba Teffo, joining us.